Mafia The Old Country on Steam Deck, so I missed this on Friday, but here I am. This is an Unreal Engine 5 game. I was honestly expecting them to use their previous engine that they used for Mafia Definitive Edition that looked awesome. And it's marked as unsupported, so no big deal. Usually UE5 games are either verified at 5 FPS or we get something like this, so let's get into it right away. Alright, so when launching it, sometimes you get a black screen like this with the Steam Deck being frozen. How do we fix it? Well, we gotta go into desktop mode. So how do we make it launch? Well, you go into desktop mode, you go to the game's compat data folder, compat data 194.1540, PFX, drive C, users, Steam user, app data, roaming, sorry, not roaming, local, and here Hangar 13 Games and Mafia The Old Country. First of all, delete this folder. This is the config file, goes to the trash. Then in Hangar 13 Games, you have your save file over here. My advice here is to remove the user settings.sav. That's gone. And now to stop the game from reloading those files from the cloud, we gotta disable the Wi-Fi, so no internet. And now we should be able to launch the game. Let's go back into gaming mode. So now that we are into the game, we go into graphics. By default, it's at 800p with TSR on performance, so basically 400p, pretty common on UE5 games. And the settings we're using are the actual lowest settings. Funnily enough, the lowest setting doesn't allow you to go with global illumination below high. This is to preserve the graphics, the art of the game, according to the menu. So yeah, the absolute lowest settings with TSR on performance. Let's see what it looks like and how it runs. And I want to thank Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Instant Gaming is a website where you can buy games for cheaper for PC, PlayStation, Xbox and Nintendo Switch. And the game we're playing today, Mafia The Old Country, you can find it for $41.80 US instead of the usual $50 that we're getting on Steam. And you can also pre-order games like Little Nightmares 3 for $34.93, Robocop Rogue City Unfinished Business for $24.68, Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, which I highly recommend, for $39.52 US. With this partnership, we're giving away a free game to one of you guys each month, so hit on participate, and the person that wins has to choose whatever game they want from Instant Gaming. So thanks again to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Let's continue. Okay, so this is basically 3 hours into the game, and as you can see already, we're not fully utilizing the GPU, we're not fully utilizing the entire Steam Deck there. We're using all the VRAM and system RAM, which again, we have a unified 16 gigs. So those 16 gigs, 5.4 are going to the video memory, and the rest are going to the system. And we're basically locked to 16 FPS, and this is on purpose that I'm going outside in this part of the game. But the game looks pretty soft already, and we're in a more complex place. Lots of geometry, lots of stuff into the distance. The game looks great, don't get me wrong. But yeah, it doesn't run well at all. So let's try something else. So when it comes to options, let's swap from TSR to FSR on performance as well. So FSR performance, and the performance is basically the same, maybe a couple frames ahead, but we're very CPU limited. It's not fully utilizing the GPU, and the core clocks are pretty low when it comes to the GPU. It can go up to 1600. Let's lock the the GPU clock to 1600 to see if this helps in any way. And we get barely extra performance, but the GPU is still not maxed out. And we're just jogging around. This is not like we are fighting multiple enemies, which we're going to get in a second. So just scroll down after choosing FSR and enable frame gen, and let's see what happens if we go back. We are now into the 40s, but again, this is not real 40 FPS, obviously. Internally it's 20-something FPS, so it looks smooth, but there is input lag, which is obvious. Honestly, most of the game, at least the first 3 hours, there was very little shooting. It was mostly walking around, cinematics. It's more like a long movie that you get some interactions in the middle. which I'm fine with it. But yeah, it doesn't require, right now at least, a lot of interaction. There's some hand-to-hand combat that you need some responsiveness. So yeah, it looks soft and we're using FrameGen, so there's input lag, but this makes it look smooth, at least, which is better than nothing. But this is a $50 game. It's linear, doesn't have an open world, but the map is pretty big. So yeah, not open world, whatever you want, but if you finish the game, you can actually roam freely through it. So yeah, the UE5 experience on Steam Deck, basically. I would really love if this game actually allowed us to go lower on the global illumination, but that's not an option. To basically keep the art of the game intact, at least that's what the developers are saying. But I don't know, maybe medium global illumination was still enough. So the game forces you to use high global illumination, you cannot put it lower than that. Maybe in a future patch this changes, but it is what it is. So let me show you another section of the game. And here in this town, we're actually getting into the 20s with frame generation on. The CPU is crying. So let's lower a bit the GPU clock to help the CPU out with a little bit more power. But still, here is super CPU bound with the amount of characters and this town area. Which again is not very complex in comparison to other UE5 games. Remember, this is not open world, this is linear. So it shouldn't be that difficult. If you see this shadow of the horse with FrameGen, well, you get that flickery mess. Thanks FrameGen for that, for those artifacts on both the UI and the moving shadows. So yeah, we got those artifacts and we're basically getting into the 30s with FrameGen on, so the internal frame rate is like 15 to 16 FPS. So keep that in mind while watching this. Without this, we're hard lock at 15. Yeah, as we get into more geometry heavy areas, well, look at those horse shadows, they get even worse because of the lower base frame rate. And I honestly wanted to show you shooting and all that, but honestly, it's a few minutes away from this part, and I don't think it's worth showing you. I can feel the input lag. It doesn't look great like this. It looks very pixelated as well. I mean, it's UE5 at 50% resolution on Steam Deck. We've seen stuff like this before. But despite being linear, a linear experience, it still runs just as bad or worse. Again, I'm not expecting the Steam Deck to run a new UE5 game with good visuals at 30 or 60 FPS with native res. But this, at least for me, is very disappointing. They could, I don't know, they could have made it more like a corridor when it comes to the missions instead of being in an open location. Because that entire map is an open location, but you are linearly going through it, to say it in some way. So it should be less demanding, that's what I'm trying to say. They could have made it into separate levels if you're going linearly with loading screens in the middle. Just a thought from mine. So it feels like wasted potential, honestly. And the fact that the game doesn't allow you to go lower on global illumination to preserve visuals makes it more difficult for lower-end systems to actually run the game. But again, I'm not really complaining. I was expecting low performance, but I think this could have been improved just with those tweaks that I'm talking about global illumination, about how the levels are structured, which requires a big refactor, so they're not going to change that, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, without FrameGen, you're getting hard lock to 15 FPS, and with FrameGen, you're basically between 28 and 40 FPS with input lag, and, well, artifacting on many things like shadows on the horses. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and, well, oh, not to mention, before I leave, that the game crashes on startup very often, and I have to go delete the config file, disconnect the internet, and then the game will actually launch. So thank you for watching, and I'll see ya next time. Bye guys!